Subscribe to the Geek Legion of Doom in 7 days.
Written and directed by David Tyrone, we are talking Dead by Dawn, or at least that is the English translation for this Polish Giallo-inspired slasher movie. So the story focuses on this theatre troupe who are preparing for a new show that's been hastily put together, and they're practicing in this old theatre that has had a little bit of a dark history, that's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so they're kind of practicing, and there's the kind of a skeleton crew of kind of staff there. And there seems to be this killer, masked killer there, who is wearing this kind of like eyeball looking mask, and he is killing them off one by one in order to do a kind of occult ritual. What will happen, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this being a movie kind of about a theatre troupe, there is definitely some kind of art house sensibilities here. It's a somewhat stylistic movie, and it's clearly inspired by, you know, Argento and the like in their kind of like Giallo stylings as well. So if you're a Giallo fan, you may well enjoy this. Let's talk about what else I think works in this movie's favour. I actually think it's sort of fairly competently directed. It's clearly going for a particular style that won't vibe for everyone, I will say that. But those who I think appreciate certainly theatre and the kind of the maybe slightly pretentious kind of world that can be, may well enjoy it. And also obviously fans of Giallo will appreciate a lot of the kind of the visual nods here to that. And there's even a little bit of kind of like discussion about sort of mainstream entertainment. They talk about Disney and stuff like that, and how it kind of caters to the lowest common denominator and things. So there's certainly a degree of you know, artistic sensibilities that are here and are looking at this as a piece of art as well as a piece of entertainment. But it is well directed. I do think some of these sequences do have a good flourish to them. Some interesting sort of like camera work being done here. I think if you are just a kind of straight slasher fan, there's actually a reasonable amount of well-staged kind of stalking and gore effects here, with this killer using a meat cleaver for the most part to dispatch his victims, and with brutal efficiency, might I say. And some of these kind of kills are done in an effective way. They look realistic. They're kind of filmed in a way that's kind of protracted, so they're kind of like long, drawn-out kills, as this killer is wanting these people to kind of suffer and not kill them too quickly and things like this. So the camera is lingering. So you know, it's not one of these films where they're not kind of moving the camera away for the kills. You are seeing everything on screen, and it looks kind of realistic, and it looks brutal, and it looks painful. And as the film goes on, you know, we have our panicked kind of troupe of actors and personnel running around trying to kind of escape. All the exits are kind of locked, so you definitely get a feel that this kind of the walls are kind of closing in. And I think adding this kind of element of the occult as well, where the killer actually has a purpose. He's trying to achieve something in regards to a supernatural kind of element to it. Gives the kind of the kind of killer a bit more motivation, a bit more impetus for kind of doing what he's doing, and this kind of leads to kind of a larger kind of world, you know. So I do think there's some plot elements here that are pretty good, and you kind of learn that, you know, everything might not just be chance. This all could have been planned and things like that. So I think there's plot-wise there's some interesting kind of stuff here. Acting, it's always difficult to tell if the acting is solid when you're watching a subtitled movie, which I did. But I've got to say, even the kind of the emotional cadences and things like that from the actors, I thought seemed all pretty good to me. There's one guy who's meant to be like this cocky kind of actor, for example, that they're kind of people sort of roll their eyes. He's a bit more not taking it too seriously, but you kind of get that without necessarily being able to understand the language and things. So I do think the acting was pretty solid. The VFX work was pretty good. The killer looks pretty unique, I have to say, with this kind of eye mask that he's wearing. So, you know, there's a lot to like here if you are a slasher fan, if you're a Giallo fan. And as I say, I think this movie tries to speak to the, shall we call it the lofty aspirations of the theatre crowd and how they might look down on popular entertainment and things like this. So there is some elements to enjoy. What doesn't work, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, what I've just said, because this movie does come across as pretentious, I have to say, and where certainly in the second half of the movie, it kind of veers into more art house territory, as the film kind of goes a little bit more obscure and kind of a bit more bizarre in regards to having like random images and things like that. So ultimately, the movie is a little pretentious, despite this movie, I think, having a little bit of commentary on that. So, yeah, that's going to be a sort of a taste thing. There are a few logic issues with this. I mean, it's all very sort of, we can't get phone signal because there's a storm and things like this. And there's a couple of times where the killer is attacking, particularly the kind of the male victims, where they just kind of seem to stand around and let themselves get attacked really without too much kind of trying to defend themselves and things like this. There's one occasion where there's quite a big group of them and they could easily have probably attacked this slasher en masse, but they just run away. I mean, I guess you've got panic and stuff, but I understand. But again, there's things here that just seem like the story wants to move in a certain direction, so we'll just do that, basically. As cool as this killer looks, I don't know how practical this mask is, I have to say. I mean, how is he seeing out of this thing? I mean, it is just a mask, it's not an actual bunch of eyeballs and things like this. And, you know, there's a few elements of that where I think it gets a little bit on the kind of the sillier side. It's actually punctuated with these kind of chapter times, with these kind of title cards, which seems unnecessary because the movie doesn't really need that, and I actually think it sort of somewhat deflates attention a little bit at certain periods. So overall, it's a fairly well put together movie, I have to say. It has a few flaws, but I think it's a watchable film. Certainly if you're a Giallo or a slasher fan, I think there's certainly worse out there. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. What were your thoughts? If you've seen it, leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Swear the oath of loyalty to the Legion. Together we will prevail.